shines through you when you leave me room.
Taurus, equanimity leading to progress. Hello everyone, welcome to this month's virtue practice. And we really are attempting to make this work of the virtues for this year a practice. And that means we work more dynamically into the activity of our spiritual will, that intentional will, not only into the thought realm, which we worked with last year, but more dynamically into the practical practice of our intentional will into our deeds, into our actions. Now, some of these virtues are harder to contemplate. How do I find a deed here? And particularly because no one can really give you this deed because of this extraordinary mystery of your individualized will. Now, who you are as a human being actually has such uniqueness to it that you are a complex individual living a complex experience, which we would call your life, or I would call my life. So there is myself, who is this complex individual, with my life, which is my own complex life. And here's this extraordinary mystery that if I am able to bring myself, who I am, everything I've been able to unfold in me so far, into relationship deeply with this other being called life, my being, uniting intimately with the being of my life, brings into existence something new, something that would not have been there had these two beingnesses come into unity, come into a dynamic with each other. Now, this picture is incredibly useful when we're facing how do I find the practice for my life through who I am. So there's a certain amount of self-knowledge, self-reflection, not just of my own beingness, but how life itself, I am relating to it. What is occurring in my life that can reveal to me as well where my practice lies. So there's a lot to say about this, and hopefully through the course of the year we will keep unveiling these mysteries, because these mysteries of the will are so profound to our human experience. You know, often we look at the human being in these kind of very simplistic, basic, and even binary terms as the way we look at something like hot and cold. We see hot and cold as opposites, as polarities. And then we try to, in a way, place upon the human being that same polarity, as though somehow male and female individuals are also as binary, as polarities, as hot and cold. But when we think about that, when you combine hot and cold, two different forces, along this kind of line of the spectrum between these polarities, you'll find various degrees of temperature, of warmth. And it's always going to be the case. Yes, there's different degrees along the line, but you're always going to speak in terms of I unite hot and cold and I find warmth. But really, the human being isn't that way. When you bring together two beings, two human beings, when they unite, something entirely new comes into being. Doesn't matter how many children you never have the same child. Doesn't matter how many creative projects that occur, you can't create the same thing if you're really bringing into a dynamic activity the uniting of two. When two or more unite together, something entirely new comes into existence. And many of us would recognize that through the varying intimate relationships that we've had. Even if you love each other's equally, that your love can't be divided, your relationship with those different individualities creates something new or has the potential to create something new if I'm not just putting myself upon the other, but rather entering into a relationship with the other. And even if you've never had a relationship with another human being, every one of us comes to have a relationship or has the potential to have a relationship to this beingness of life. And this beingness of life is such an intimate dynamic. Look at all the individuals in the world. Look at how extraordinarily unique each is, and extraordinarily unique in a way circumstances we find ourselves in. And yet each of us can sleep through it. And I don't mean be unconscious in it necessarily, but not bring ourselves to the life that is given to us. Rather, we enter into a kind of anesthetized relationship to our life. We enter into a conditioned kind of living the life of someone else. How often we say things like, oh, I wish I had learned another language. I wish I had learned an instrument. Is that because I missed it in my life? Or is that because someone else has written that, that script for their life, and we have now been told this is the life you should live? Now think about that. To learn another language, to learn an instrument, that's very cultural subscription. How do we make our life so individual that we say this, that through my being in life, something new comes into existence? And that is the essence of love. When we practice love, cultivate love, something new, some creative force pours into the world. When we practice love, cultivate love, when we bring ourselves, which is a love indeed, into unity, which is a loving activity with life itself, some new force arises for the future. And herein lies this mystery that Rudolf Steiner speaks about in one of his talks, Love and Its Meaning in the World. This new force that arises through my loving cultivation, my loving deed, is for the future of humanity. It's a creative, loving force that supports the world. It's not a deed I do to improve my own karma, to improve my own future. And therein lies this nature of love, that true love really ripples out to the world around us. And so when we're taking on a particular practice, say the practice of equanimity, it's harder for us to recognize how does my living my life in a way that supports my equanimity actually affect the world. Well, actually, that's the reality, because all of the deeds that we do out of love, cultivate and practice out of love, create forces for the future. They are like two human beings that unite and produce a child. You with life unite and bring a new being into existence when that level of dynamic is truly possible. And so it's in this vein that we say that anthroposophy is not to impart knowledge, but truly to awaken life, because it is such a creative process to awaken through wisdom what it means to be alive, and it helps to enkindle more life. So I am bringing this in this way because equanimity can feel like, this kind of lukewarm state. I'm going to work with equanimity, so I'm going to kind of not feel anything too much or too low, too high, too low, too intense. No, it's not that equanimity, because we actually do still experience life dynamically, but we're not talking about an equanimity on this fulcrum of highs and lows, but an equanimity that allows a centering, a centeredness. And with that, we can begin to ask ourselves the question, what do I do in my daily life that uncenters me? Now, for some, it might be staying up too late. For some, it might be putting on too much screen time. For some, it might be the type of food they eat. For some, it might be the type of people or the way they are triggered by certain people. There's kind of things that we do that we know throw us off center. So in a practice for equanimity, one could choose knowing myself, knowing what throws me off center, which is not the same as necessarily throws everyone else off center, but knowing what throws me off center. And so I cannot stand in this dynamic to life, but rather I get caught up in the stories and lose myself, or lose the possibility of being awake. What would help that? What practice, which is already occurring in my life that throws me off center, could I make an adjustment that will help me be more centered so that I may be more awake to life, so that my relationship to life has this dynamic of creating something new. And so here we have our practice for the month, if you can take your time to think about that. And what we would do as we work with this practice daily, when we are making that adjustment, whether it's changing the foods we eat, which we know throw us off center, changing the sleep pattern, changing the way in which we engage with a particular person or other being. When we make that change, we'll try to be conscious of the will activity that was required. There's a will activity required. And that activity, we try to be conscious then on the head, above the head, pouring down to the heart. So we want to follow the will stream so that we can engage that shift from the consciousness of changing the will to the active streaming in the life body towards the heart of this practice. And now we will listen to the verse for virtue of Taurus, the virtue of Taurus Verse, and this will be followed by the eurythmy practice of Taurus. Some of you will be engaging with all three of these will activities, some with the individual life will activity, some only with the verse, some only with the eurythmy. But each of us working with this work are bringing some creative process into the world because we are practicing love, cultivating love.
Shine forth, O glory of being. Reach into the power of becoming and weave the thread of life through worlds imbued with being, into mindful revelation, into radiant life awareness. O glory of being, appear. And stay present and active with the streaming activity that can be awoken from the words, from what's behind the words. And focus on that streaming in a movement from the top of the head down through the forehead and the face, to the front of the human form, down the throat neck area, into the chest, and deep down into the heart center, which is in the middle of the chest. And just stay engaged with that streaming activity.
Taurus. Hello, and welcome to this month's Taurus. Last month we had Aries. This month we're working with Taurus. Taurus is the colour orange, and orange has warmth and also more of a flow to it than the Aries had last month. So those of you that are new to this site, you may wish to go back and have a look at Aries, and then prior to that you might like to go back and also have a look at an introduction to eurythmy, which brings another exercise, which is the E-R-O. So a very important exercise to practice with this practice of Taurus. Now, some of you may also know that with the zodiac signs comes a particular part of the body. And this is coming from a stream from the cosmos. So if I make a gesture with my arm, say this gesture, then the cosmos is able to meet this gesture and stream towards me. And this cosmic force that comes is an etheric force. So for instance, physically and with your eyes, you can see me do this gesture. But what is invisible to us is the etheric force which is streaming from the cosmos. And that's the healing force. And that's the force that comes towards us to also create this next part of the human being, which is the larynx. So last month it was the head. Taurus brings the larynx. So you saw me bring this gesture in the beginning, but now I'm going to teach it to you as well. So we have way out in the periphery, streaming towards us, both arms, left hand comes lightly curled towards the larynx, the right one comes all the way over the head to around about the ear on this side. And it's really covering this head. And this is pointing towards our larynx. And in between our head and our heart sits the larynx. And so we could think about that aspect of it. Where does our speaking come from? So the speaking is sitting here. It's the form of the larynx that comes from the cosmos, but it's our inner activity that brings the speech in. So is it an activity from our heart, from our thoughts? Could be both, but that's something that you can maybe think about. The other part of eurythmy, which is very important, is that yes, you follow my gesture or you see my gesture, but then you need to move away from the screen, away from hearing my voice, and practice that gesture yourself. And it's the inner activity that you create from practicing that will enable you to have this in-streaming of the cosmos towards you. So I hope that's clear, that the cosmos is going to stream health-giving forces towards us when we make these beautiful gestures in eurythmy. And yes, so I'm going to move back further and do this gesture together. So it's the left hand coming slightly curled with this flowing movement which comes towards the larynx. The right arm is coming up and over the head, and we need to do them at the same time. And the other thing is that if we remember from the Aries, it brought us into this uprightness. Now we need to feel this real strength, like the head is so straight and upright on top of our throat area here. So let's try this all in one movement. And releasing. And then again, after we have moved this gesture, we will stand for a minute and we will imagine the cosmos raining in through the top of our head. It's coming across our forehead on the inside, coming down towards our throat area and down to the heart. And in this cosmic stream that's coming in, we will think of the words of equilibrium. That's the virtue for this month. So the equilibrium coming in from the cosmos is going to meet our equilibrium, and between them something new may arise. So let's try this together. Firstly with the E-R-O 3 times. Taurus. And now the streaming from the cosmos in through the top of the head, across the forehead, streaming down inside towards the throat area, down to the front of the heart, and moving between equilibrium from the cosmos and equilibrium from ourselves. We may find something new arises in this space.
I am the one who shines through you when you